Previously on Kawaii-Fi Quest.
Look, Pistol Pete, we're flying! We're finally at the fjords!
And it only took us 13 episodes.
That's like a whole season of anime.
Does that mean something big's about to happen for you guys?
Coco, look at your pigeon. He's glowing.
He's not a pigeon, he's a... Oh my Hestia. Pistol Pete, are you okay?
Wait, is Pistol Pete evolving?
No, he looks like he's molting. I think he's having another panic attack.
He doesn't have panic attacks. No, Pete, it's okay. You're safe. Calm down.
I can help.
baby.
I
Deep
speak
breath.
some bird. You kind of have to if you want to ask directions in the clouds.
Oh yeah? What's Goose like?
A lot of swearing and foretelling the end of the days. It's a bit uncomfortable, actually. We don't like to talk to them.
So what's Pistol Pete saying?
Pedicabo ego vos...
Stop, we can't say that on air.
Not even in an ancient dead language.
Especially not in a dead language. That's half our listeners.
Well, he blames Coco for losing his feathers.
What? Why? I was only trying to help.
And you took him flying far too high and far too fast.
But I thought he was enjoying that. He's a dragon. And anyway, that's your fault too, you turnip.
And you keep insisting that he's a dragon.
Look, the shopkeeper told me he was. I went in there, I said I wanted a dragon, that's what he gave me.
He's not a dragon at all.
What?
I told you that guy was pulling your leg.
He's actually a wyvern.
Wait, seriously?
What? Well, why didn't you say so? Why didn't anyone tell me?
He says he hates you.
What? No!
But you did get him to the fjords, and as such, he has to give you a boon.
Seriously, where does that sound keep coming from?
Have we finished the quest?
But why is he still all fluffy and not scaly?
Unfortunately, you're only halfway done. To turn him back into a wyvern, you have to take part in the greatest challenge known to dragons.
Is that some sort of fight against a dragon?
No, it's Dragon's Den.
That sounds dangerous.
Oh, it's a game show. It's quite popular, actually.
It's over 9,000!
Configure the language logic interface for Japanese.
Kawaii-Fi.
Kawaii-Fi.
Konnichiwa, and welcome to another episode of Kawaii-Fi Radio, the podcast where we look into the world of anime and manga. I'm your host, Kyle, and joining me are my co-hosts, as ever, Coco and Kenny. How you doing, guys?
Hey, all.
Pretty good. Pretty warm, though.
Yeah, it's a very, very hot day here in Australia.
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Where we are.
Indicative of the winter season of anime.
Yeah, it's perfectly timed. Who would have thought? I mean, just
Who'd have thunk
wonderful.
it?
Wonderful.
Right.
But we do need to talk about what's airing at the moment first. And Somali and the Forest Spirit we managed to catch a few episodes of. And
Beautiful,
yeah.
breathtaking artwork.
I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far.
And it's kind of comfier than I was suspecting. Absolutely nothing bad feels like it's going to happen.
I kind of get the feeling that this is going
No,
to end in tears.
Kyle, absolutely nothing bad is going to happen to that adorable child and her
her golem.
charming father.
I can't really agree.
Anyway,
Nothing
so
bad will
let's
happen.
talk about this, Kenny, because obviously Kyle isn't interested.
I am interested. I just...
No, look at the
you
disinterest
just
on
want
his
to
face.
rain on it.
I don't.
Please let
Totally
us.
raining
please
on our winter
let the
parade.
suspension of belief continue
Okay, I'll
that
let it-
everything
I'll let
is
it
going to be
continue.
hunky dory
Right.
and we're going to be happy.
Yep,
because
yep.
this is a lovely, happy anime where nothing. Anyway,
This is a nice story about the extinction of humanity.
Yeah, lovely,
yeah, there are
lovely.
hardly any humans in this anime. Basically, we're in a world where everything is fantastical. It's amazing, the imagination.
It's like your kind of fantasy kingdom kind of setting where in any other anime you would see like humans, dwarves, lizard folks and elves sort of getting along. But in this, like
The,
we've got
the monsters
everything
won.
in
Yeah.
between. Yeah.
the monsters won, they don't like humanity. Humanity were kind of to them at the start.
Yeah.
And so
Which
they
is-
have gone sort of missing except for this one young child.
Yeah, so basically, there's a forest, and the guardian of the forest is a golem. One day he finds a human child with chains still around her, hiding. And unlike other animes, we then skip forward in time. We don't cover the whole, oh, let me clean you up. Let me make sure you're okay. Where did you come from? How'd you get here?
Yeah.
No, we skip straight to the to the journey
To the meat and potatoes.
yes.
And it's really quite wonderful. Like the animation style's beautiful, the audio, like the music and the background sounds and everything is just incredibly well
And
composed.
the colours are jumping out.
Yeah, especially the colors and the art. It's like it's another kind of a fantasy, but it's got such a unique look to it.
And the child's name is Somali. She's been dressed up to be to appear as a Minotaur child.
Yes, she has.
She has
Because
little
she
horns
can't-
stitched onto her hood.
Unfortunately, every time I hear her name, I just go, I am the captain now. So
I never thought of that
What a
until
reference.
now. See, it's just ruined.
Cheers, Kyle.
yeah, I'll keep my hands off that. But on the note of keeping hands off, keep your hands off Aizuki-an. This is a amazing show.
I think we mentioned the art style when we keep going back to art styles. When we first took a look at this at the
it's
start
part
of the anime
previous
season.
Yes.
And I figured it was just going to be kind of like an interesting kind of adventure where they occasionally go into their sort of fantasy scape. But no, they're also teaching us about animation and how to do and how to animate things. Now Japan is
Production.
once again doing us another educate.
It is, and it's a lovely educate, to be honest.
This is done by the same guy who did Night is Short, Walk On Girl, and Devilman Crybaby. So he's got a, he's the director at least, and he's got, that sort of experience before where he's been involved in both the animation process and the directing and writing. So it's really quite impressive to see.
So it tells the story of three girls who meet it. We went over this the last episode,
Yeah.
but obviously these three girls want to make animation in various roles, and they've been given a kind of a clubhouse that's
Yeah.
basically a tetanus disaster. Everything is rusty. But you know what? When I first saw this shed structure that they've been given, I was reminded of the glass house that Georges Méliès used.
Whoa. Georges
in
Méliès, the like old school kind of black and white
Voyage
film director.
to the Moon.
Ah.
One of, I think, the first film.
It
the
might be a
earliest film
homage
that
to it
exists.
because there is a lot in this which looks at the tradition of both animation and film as part of the
Yep.
actual storytelling. It's
Yep.
a love letter essentially to film and animation.
Yeah.
We might have to do some research on
And the
this.
entire production behind it, and every episode they have adventures, but it's in their imagination, so you
It's
see
pretty
where
cool.
they're going with it, and it's just like, this is what it's like to be an artist.
Yeah.
And to imagine what's going to happen, and then and you can see sort of like the behind the scenes bits as well. I absolutely love this anime.
It's a very creative exploration of animation.
Yes.
I've really enjoyed it and I just can't wait to see where it goes.
Very happy
And
with
the
it.
characters are all very memorable.
Oh, I love it. And their backpacks
Yeah.
are so cool.
The backpacks are actually very cool.
Yeah, one of them's two Converse sneakers jammed together. That's what it looks like.
One of
The
them
oth-
looks like a payphone, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
what's the other one?
the other one's actually just more of just a normal military rucksack.
Yeah, it's camouflage like her
Yeah.
hat,
Yeah.
Yes.
So she can hide in plain sight.
so she can
This-
observe.
They're such different characters, and the way they're drawn is just, they've got such character. They're so unique. It's not like every other sort of stock standard female high school aged kid. Like they're different shapes, they're different heights, they're different, so different
And that
personalities.
opening theme is just bonkers.
It is.
It'll stay stuck
it
in my
really
head.
is.
Well, look, we do need to talk about what we're doing today. And this episode, we're talking about reboots because there's the reboot of Sorcerous Stabber Orphen, and that's now in full swing this season. And in Hollywood culture, we are used to seeing these reboots fairly regularly across all mediums. That's from, your big budget films and to cartoons and TV
I
shows.
would say too used to it. It's too used to reboots. There's just too many.
But Japan has a slightly different take when it comes to rebooting their shows, and it's why we've only seen, a handful of shows at least recently getting the full reboot treatment. So I have a question for both of you. This episode, by the end of the show, we all have to come up with an anime that we would like to see rebooted and explain why
In
we
the
want to see it.
same medium.
In the same medium.
Okay.
And hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing so far, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button and
Let
joining
us
us for
know.
a little bit.
Let us
let us
know
know what
what
you'd like
you'd
to see
like.
rebooted. But
Yes.
before we get on to this episode's main topic, it's time for the anime news.
Making headlines.
Really?
Sort of.
Anime news.
More Made in Abyss is on the way, and Digimon is getting the reboot treatment. This is Kawaii-Fi Anime News. Netflix has entered into an agreement with Studio Ghibli to add the company's entire film catalogue out to their streaming service outside the US, Japan and Canada. Starting on February 1st, 7 Studio Ghibli films will be added to the streaming service each month until all 21 are online by April, and that includes Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. US and Canada residents will be able to stream the films through HBO Max in spring, and with the movies, they are now all available to buy digitally across a range of platforms. The winner of this year's Shogakukan Manga Awards have been unveiled this week, with a familiar title joining the winners. Kaguya-sama Love is War, along with Soccer Manga Aoshi, both took out the Best General Manga Award. Maiko-san Chi no Makanai-san, a manga centered on a girl working as a cook in a Kyoto geisha lodge, took home the Best Shonen Manga Award, with Nagi's Long Vacation taking out the Best Shoujo Manga Award. Kadokawa has revealed the Made in Abyss franchise is getting a sequel anime project following on from the series' currently airing film, Journey's Dawn. The news was announced with a video showcasing the series so far, before unveiling the artwork for the 6th layer of the Abyss. It's unclear if the new project will be another film or a full series, but we'll likely hear more in the coming months. VR MMO series Log Horizon is getting a 3rd season, 6 years after its 2nd season ended. Named Log Horizon Fall of the Round Table, the series shares the same name as the series' 12th novel and will feature a returning cast and production team. The series started with 30,000 gamers being trapped inside a fantasy online game called Elder Tale, but the first book in this series was actually released 2 years before Sword Art Online even came onto the scene. Staying with Digital Worlds, the Digimon franchise is getting a new anime, rebooting the 1999 Digimon Adventure series. The new anime is set in the year 2020 and will feature a brand new story focusing on Yagami Taichi in his 5th year of the elementary school. The new series will start airing in Japan this April. Netflix have announced their international release of anthropomorphic animal series Beastars, with it landing on the service on March 13 outside Japan. The series first premiered in Japan in October last year, running for 12 episodes and adapting the first arc of Paru Itagaki's manga of the same name. A 2nd season has been announced, but there's no release date as of yet. Heading to the bookshelves and staying with Beastars, author Paru Itagaki says the end is in sight for the manga in her author's note in this week's Weekly Shonen Champion. The manga began in 2016 and has since released over 160 chapters and 17 compiled volumes. Paru added she would work on the story with everything she has until it reaches its end. Also coming to an end are 2 series which have both had recent anime adaptations. Devilman Saga, the latest entry in Go Nagai's Devilman franchise, is due to end in 2 chapters' time according to Shogakukan's Big Comic magazine. Devilman Crybaby, a modern adaptation of the story, premiered in Netflix in 2018. And sci-fi gag member, Space Battleship Tiramisu, is set to end its run after 102 chapters, with its 99th chapter released this month. The franchise had 2 seasons with 26 episodes, which aired in 2018, both available on Crunchyroll and Funimation. And finally, it looks like US audiences will finally get the chance to catch anime film Ride Your Wave, with several theatre chains listing the screening on the 19th of February. The film follows surf-loving college student Hinako, who moves to a small seaside town and falls in love with a firefighter called Minato, who later loses his life at sea. Hinako is devastated by the loss and can no longer even look at the ocean until one day she sings a song that reminds her of their time together, and Minato appears in some water nearby. And that's your anime news for the week ending January 26, 2020.
Man, this Ghibli thing's becoming a bit of a saga, isn't it?
It certainly is.
First it's like, we're not going to be streaming, we're not going to be digital at all. And now
we're everywhere.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I've been wondering actually for a while, because you know how obviously we started out with we probably started out with earlier than Betamax, but there was Betamax, VCR, DVD, Blu-ray,
HD, DVD,
and now everything is streamed or as data. I feel, you know how we've had that with music, and now people are going back to LPs. Are we going to? I don't know if we're going to go back to VCRs.
No,
but I feel like people want physical things to hold, and I feel like I'm not sure if that's part of Ghibli's philosophy as to why they didn't want to stream, because it would cheap, because the easy access cheapens the what you've got in front of you. You'd just be like, maybe I'll chuck this on in the background. Whereas if you own it, you sort of set out to watch it. I don't know, but I'm just wondering if they're going to go eventually with a physical. I don't know, something physical.
Well, I mean, you can buy physical copies of the Ghibli films. It's just that they're a bit harder to come by. And I think because of that manufacturing limitation, perhaps this is their solution to kind of get it shown to more people.
Maybe.
Especially, I mean, let's be honest, it's going to be a while until we see another full-length film from Studio Ghibli if the recent updates are anything to go by. So I guess building that hype.
I reckon it doesn't matter too much either way, because people in our kind of community are very, very fond of collecting things, whether it's like memorabilia or the physical copies of the things that we see online and on TV. So I reckon it's like, it's going to get onto streaming services. Everyone on Netflix is going to see it, and then they're going to be like, oh, that's great. I should go out and get that.
Now, you mentioned Space Battleship Tiramisu.
Yes.
And our audience may not or may realise that there is an adaptation for the stage for Space Battleship Tiramisu.
There's been several. So Space Battleship Tiramisu is a gag-style sci-fi manga.
It is brilliant. If anyone hasn't read it or watched it, you must.
It takes the utter mickey out of Gundam, Neon Genesis, anything in space pretty much that's got giant mechs.
You're going to need to repeat that before I go insane. There is a stage play version.
Yes.
How, why, where, when, and how?
Japan.
Well, maybe
Japan,
we
yes.
obviously need to go to Japan and catch one of these stage shows to see how it's done, how it translates, because it's translatable. It's just how. It's just the methods.
Well, I imagine a black background with a guy in a cockpit. That's probably how it's going to work.
Potentially.
We
that'd
do
be
also
wild.
have something else I need to mention that we didn't fit in the news that does connect to that Netflix Ghibli thing, which is Funimation now in Australia, because Funimation and several other groups, including Wakanim and Anime Lab, have all merged. Funimation now is actually officially moving all of its Australian content to Anime Lab in Australia and New Zealand.
Whoa.
So it's now going to be a single service here instead of having to have Anime Lab and Funimation with having half on both.
Do I
That's
need
convenient.
to subscribe to a completely other service again?
No, we just cancel the Funimation one and keep the Anime Lab one. It's all good.
All right, that'll work.
So,
Wicked.
yeah.
So that's what everyone who's listening can do if they've got 2 subscriptions.
Exactly. And I mean, at this point, they haven't announced any changes to the pricing structure at Anime Lab either. So that's a
So
win-win.
when does that take place?
That's started now.
Okay.
So the stuff's all starting to show up over on Anime Lab in the coming weeks. We do need to actually mention briefly Digimon because it
If you
has...
start rapping, I'll climb over the desk.
So Digimon, for those that didn't catch it or this was before their time, Digimon was a series that was trying to compete with Pokemon essentially back in the day for the same sort of audience type. Digimon was a series where a group of kids got digital monsters and were able to travel into a digital world and join their monsters
And
in
digitally evolve them as well.
digitally evolve them as well. And it wasn't just a case of like, max of 2 evolutions like Pokemon. They could keep evolving and merge and all these other things. It was
cross-evolving between the other Digimon. It's like, it was pretty involved.
It was pretty involved.
Interesting designs.
And we had the first series, Digimon Adventures, and Digimon Adventures 02, which was like the second generation, new kids who are younger than the main cast showing up and taking over their role.
They went into darker plots as they went along. I
They
do
did.
remember that.
But the series kind of disappeared a little bit from Western, at least, audiences. There's still been films and series, and then until recently, then we had Digimon Adventures Try.
Yeah, it was a reboot.
Which was a 6-episode, not so much a reboot, but a continuation of the original series with the main characters as much older people, like end of high school sort of thing, which basically continued the story from back there. But what we're getting now is a full reboot from the very start.
Wicked.
And that's coming this year in April, I believe. And it's definitely aimed at the younger audience. It's in a 9 a.m. Sunday time slot, so it's going to be
That is
pretty...
prime time.
Yeah. You gotta hope they know exactly what they're planning for it at this point.
So this may not be relevant,
Okay.
but I happen to possess a framed poster from Pokemon the first movie.
Oh.
And, well, actually, it's my brother's. I'm not sure if
okay.
it's both of ours. Anyway, so we weren't using it, so I decided I'd put it on Facebook Marketplace. And usually you get people saying, is this still available? Can I like lowball you?
Yeah.
I got a guy message me saying, when can I come pick this up? I will PayPal you the money now. I'm very super keen. May I please have it? Did not try and offer any different price, just went for it. How cool is people are obviously still into it.
It's like I said, man, people in like this kind of community, we are like huge into memorabilia and collecting.
And
It says a lot.
And it's in good nick, so good
Stuff.
stuff.
Well, actually, they did reboot the Mewtwo movie as well, and that's landing on Netflix soon. They rebooted it as a sort of CG.
Yeah, I remember
special
seeing
one.
the trailer for that ages ago.
Yeah, that's just landed on Netflix this week as well.
Wicked.
So, yes. But, yes, we do need to get on to the main meat and potatoes of today. So let's get into our feature.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
Anime history.
Yes, and today it's all about anime reboots. And just to be clear, we're not talking about live action reboots. We're talking about staying within the same medium. You've made an anime of it, and then you remake it as an anime again.
So not an adaptation.
Correct.
A reboot of the same medium, the same show, just slightly different. Okay, and there's been so many of them,
Oh,
haven't
there's
there?
tons.
Yeah.
We initially thought that, this was kind of a rare thing. I mean, you look at Western animation, you've got Scooby-Doo, Teenage
Yeah.
Mutant Ninja Turtles, Sonic the Hedgehog, Ben 10,
DuckTales.
Hey.
That's
Yeah.
recently had it.
Thundercats as well, Teen Titans Go, I think also happened,
I
which
think there was one.
kind of messy.
Yeah, that was mixed reviews. I think there was one for He-Man of all things.
Yeah, there was
Really?
actually. And then there was, I think, recently Powerpuff Girls as well. Like, it's a very common thing, not just in cinema, but in animation as well, for especially for American animation.
And that can, it can be a good thing sometimes. It's like, an interesting new take
Yeah.
on a piece of art, but occasionally no.
Yeah. But we should probably have a look at, we thought, anime reboots were kind of something that happened in like the 90s, 2000s.
So we went researching and we were trying to find out where the first one was and how, and there have been so many,
There
so we had
have.
to wade through quite a few.
We literally went all the way back to when Tezuka, the year Tezuka started putting actual animation out and going through it and going, okay, which one of these has been rebooted?
Because
Which
of
one
course
these has been
Astro
rebooted?
Boy has been rebooted a number of times.
It
and
has.
it had its start in black and white in 1963. Has recently been rebooted, recently got a new film.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that was a
got staying
CGI
power.
film, I think. I think that had Nicolas Cage in it.
I think it did too.
Well, you've got to
He
have
was
someone to be
I think
crazy,
he was
so-
Dr. Tenma.
There
Yeah.
you go, makes sense.
Yeah.
But the first anime reboot we seem to have found was Cyborg 009.
Not 007.
No. All the other cyborgs in that series are named 00 something. It was in 1979, the reboot. The original was actually in 1968.
Yikes.
Ah.
So this goes back a fair while.
Yeah, it does. But that's the first proper reboot. Devilman, for instance, as well, also got a reboot fairly early on. The original Devilman was 1972, the adaptation. 1979, so only 7 years later.
And then more recently on Netflix as well.
Yeah, and there's been plenty of reboots of Devilman actually over
Yeah.
the years. There's been another 2 which we haven't mentioned in here, including films.
So
Wow.
the original of Cyborg 009 was which year?
1968.
So wouldn't technically that mean that Astro Boy would be the earliest reboot?
Well,
As-
it's the earliest one to have been rebooted, but the first one to be rebooted was Cyborg 009 because that reboot came out in 1979 and Astro Boy's reboot was 1980.
I
So,
get what
yeah.
you mean. You're talking about the date that the reboot came
Yes.
out. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Now I understand.
Because otherwise we could go a lot further back and have a look at some Japanese novels which were adapted into sort of silent movie style
Again,
things.
that would be an adaptation, not a
Exactly.
reboot.
Well, no,
There's a
the
lot of,
adaptation to screen was early, and then they adapted that into an anime later on. There's only a few of them.
Which makes me actually kind of wonder, like, what the whole culture and how do
Yeah.
people perceive these reboots? Are they really, welcomed?
Yeah, that's a good question. It does seem, I mean, we've mentioned this before on a few things like with Gundam, aka Alita Battle Angel, that there's not so much of a focus on looking at things in the past in Japan. They're very forward focused. So when these reboots come out, a lot of people just see them for what they are, as opposed to obsessing over something that was in the past.
So they would look at it as a completely new.
It seems to be that way, yeah.
So separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
whereas we are more inclined to I feel that we're more inclined to look at reboots as an extension of the first one, just like redoing a redo.
Oh yeah, I reckon we are like heavily nostalgia focused here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, let's have a look. I mean, when it's usually done, these reboots are because either the source material has varied from what was done in the first version, or the original writer wasn't happy with the final product, or they want to expand on the story because they were limited.
Well, Fruits Basket, the writer wasn't happy with.
No.
Correct.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah, because I heard that apparently they missed out a lot. They skipped over because she was writing the manga.
At the time, yeah.
Sorry, was it a she or a he?
She, I believe, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a shame because that's, I understand adapting, mangas while they're popular. That makes sense. But when you try to wrap up the entire show when it's not finished, you often will end up either frustrating the creator or frustrating the audience. It kind of depends. There's been a lot of notable reboots in recent years. Sailor Moon had Sailor Moon Crystal come out. Original Sailor Moon 92, Sailor Moon Crystal 2014.
Have I told you how Sailor Moon ruined my chemistry exam? I
You
think
have.
I
Yes,
have.
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm still sore about that.
Okay, well, the original Sailor Moon series actually has a lot of filler, which was never mentioned in the manga.
Yeah.
To an extent of almost 50% filler.
Get out, really?
Yeah.
Really?
And that's why the 2014 Sailor Moon series actually covers the entire manga in only about 30 episodes.
Oh,
Wow.
okay.
So it says a lot.
Yeah, that was like hundreds of episodes of like the original.
There were 3 series: Sailor Moon R, S, SS, and then something else.
Sailor Moon USSR.
And of course, we can't talk about filler if
No.
we don't mention Dragon Ball.
No, you can't. And that's you've got original Dragon Ball, and then there was Dragon Ball Kai, which was trying to make the I think it was the whole or
They
just
got
the Z
rid
saga.
of I think it was the Z saga.
Yeah.
They
They got rid of
took a lot
Garlic
of-
Jr.
And of course, this sort of thing happens for a lot of like shonen series, especially Naruto is famous
Yeah.
for it. Bleach, I believe, had a bunch of it as well.
Mm.
Like the tune is like where the manga, they had caught up to the manga. They're like, quick, just throw a filler episode at it. It comes out tomorrow.
Yep.
I think that happened in one of the later, I think it's called Arankara arc.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now there is one that I discovered through this research that I haven't seen and I really want to see. It's Here Comes Miss Modern.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yes.
do remember hearing about that.
Looks actually really cool.
Because that was 1978. It was very, very
was telling-
indicative of its time, wasn't
Well,
it?
it was telling the story of a young woman who's living in the 1920s period.
And she's trying to be sort of her own woman, go her own way.
Yeah, whereas like she doesn't want to get into an arranged marriage. She's a tomboy. She wears Western clothing. She's sort of just
In the
standing up for herself.
1920s.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy.
It's
Yeah,
very
it's a big
sort
deal.
of proto-feminist material. And then there was a reboot for it. When did that come
There
around?
were two reboot films which covered the entire thing. There was 2017 and 2018 as a part
Wow.
1 and part 2.
Oh, we'll have to watch that.
Yeah. Surprisingly, one I didn't realise was quite old, Humanoid Monster Bem. Now, we mentioned this briefly last year as an anime we couldn't find too much information about as it was airing for its reboot then. But it originally came out in 1968. It's had a reboot series in 2006. In between there have been films, and this 2019 one was yet again another reboot with a different take on the story.
Yeah, that sounds huge.
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult to find, you figure?
At the time, no one had picked up the streaming rights to it. So I don't know if that's changed since then. I haven't had a chance to look, but it didn't get the I guess you could say the exposure that it was looking for. But I mean, there's a lot here. There's Hunter x Hunter, Dororo, Hellsing, Astro Boy, Devilman, Gatchaman, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Fate Stay Night, Ashita no Joe. Admittedly,
Oh,
the
yes, Ashita no Joe.
Admittedly, the the reboot of
It's a big
Ashita
one.
no Joe is Megalobox, which are very different. Ashita no Joe is just boxing.
And Megalobox is more cybernetic boxing.
Cybernetic
But it
boxing.
sort of takes it because Megalobox was made to commemorate
Mm.
Ashita no Joe,
It was.
wasn't it? So it's not the exact story, but it's got bits of it where it's honouring it. which-
Exactly.
And the
Oh,
character
love
design
it.
for it is so on point, like
amazing.
as an homage to the original, the homage.
Mhm.
Homage.
An homage?
Yeah.
There's also Kino's Journey as well, and of course Gundam, because we
Of
constantly see sort of rehashes of Gundam stories. Admittedly, they're all different, but sometimes you do get those reboot ideas where they'll take, Gundam Unicorn and reboot into a new version of it.
Yes.
There was a recent series of Gundam, which is they build the Gundam, like these are kids building like
Yep.
small scale Gundam and then using particles to basically bring them to life to fight on a small scale
Gundam Builders
battlefield.
is a reboot
Yeah, it's,
as well, yeah. It's pretty crazy.
So they have just multiple different stories for this single kind of IP. Would you call that rebooting?
It's hard to know. It's a reboot or a reimagination. It's kind of hard to tell. But we do need to talk about probably one of the most well-known reboots that's happened in recent memory, and we'll be right back after this.
Kawaii-Fi. I think I watched that as a kid.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Back Catalogue.
And this is at the top of the list for a lot of people.
It
Indeed,
really
it's
is.
actually at the top of the list for my anime list.
Ooh.
It sits at number 1 with a 9.22 star rating, followed closely by Steins Gate at 911 rating.
Wow.
I'm talking, of course, about Fullmetal Alchemist.
Yes, and the reboot, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And there wasn't, surprisingly, there wasn't a massive amount of time between them.
No, kind of. They were pretty. They happened pretty quickly after each other, and there is actually kind of some reasoning for that, I guess.
Yeah, well, look, let's start from like the bottom, and that's the manga, and that started in 2000 and ran through to 2010, 108 chapters, 27 volumes, and during that time, it won the 49th Shokukakan Manga Award in the Shonen category back in 2004.
Prestigious enough.
It is good. It is very good.
Oh, so I should go into the story, of course.
Of course.
Yes.
All right. Now, this takes place in a sort of an alternate world where there is a power called alchemy, the ability to take existing materials and to transmute them into whatever you need at the time. Like you can turn a broken old radio into a brand spanking new, fully working radio just with the materials that you have.
Which is very cool when you see it in the show.
Yeah, it kind of gives the world like rules and limitations to what you can and can't do. Now, the story follows the brothers Edward and Alphonse Elric. They've tried to use alchemy in a kind of a taboo and forbidden way, resurrecting their deceased mother.
Is that necromancy?
Yes,
Necroalchemy?
necroalchemy.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
I believe that fits. They kind of pay a heavy price for it. It works, but also really, 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 really doesn't work at all.
No, not at all.
The thing they bring back is not their mother, and they lose life and limb in the process.
Yeah.
Alphonse, his entire body is vanished into a mysterious realm, and his spirit is bound in a suit of armor. Edward loses his arm and leg and has to have them replaced with a prosthetic combat mail called Auto Mail.
I think Edward loses his leg to the ritual for his mother, then loses the arm when he places Al and binds him to the suit
Yes.
of armor.
That's right, yes.
It's the series, the original series, Fullmetal Alchemist, just titled that, ran in 2003, and only had 2 years of content to work with, didn't it?
Pretty much, yes.
And, they were instead asked at Studio Bones to create an original story based off the information they had. And there was some pretty interesting facts around that I remember reading to do with the writer.
Really?
Actually, on the note of the writer, Arakawa Hiromu is actually a male pen name for the writer. Her real name is Arakawa Hiromi.
Yeah, she worried that people wouldn't take her seriously as a shonen manga writer if they knew she was a woman.
Unfortunately, I mean, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
There is
Not so much the case now. A lot of the big shonens are written by women.
It's true.
That's true.
But
back
back then,
Well, I hope it helped her because if this is where it got her,
yeah.
I mean, it's such a good series. What I enjoyed, I've only ever seen Brotherhood. I loved the way that it mixes everything together. It has comedy, drama, everything in between.
A lot of drama.
Yeah.
drama.
It's, oh my gosh, it's got Like, it's the origin of one of the most horrific things I've
Yeah.
almost ever seen in an anime. Probably one of, it's up there.
Yeah.
One of the saddest events I've ever witnessed in an
Yep.
anime.
So horrible, in fact, that you're not even still allowed to talk on it on some of the worst places on the internet. They shun you if you mention it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was talking about Hughes.
Oh.
Oh,
The
Hughes
first one
was
was
pretty
the-
sad.
It's really hard to tell. There are a lot of just
Yes.
deeply emotional, heartbreaking moments in this series.
But there's also Alexander Louis Armstrong.
Oh, Armstrong is amazing.
He's so cool.
he's
And
this
his
sort
sister.
of like, he's a muscle wizard. He's this just, he constantly strips off his jacket to become shirtless and flex his glorious muscles.
So in this world, you can use, magic, except it's called alchemy. And
It requires some prerequisites to use, such as creating a circle on the floor and drawing, ideograms onto it.
It's there's a sort of a fundamental rule to the alchemy that to gain something, an alchemist has to sacrifice something of equal value in a sort of way.
yeah, which is why Al lost his body and Ed
Yeah.
lost his leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. The second animation, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, actually aired in 2009, and that finished a month after the manga finished. And they worked closely with the original source material and the writer Arakama Hiromu. And apparently she showed the director Yashika Iro her plans for the manga's ending so that they could both reach the end at a similar time.
That's so smart.
Yeah, and he was like, whoa.
It's funny, but with the original, because a lot of people think that, it's the case for other animes like Hellsing Abridged, that a new ending was made because...
Hellsing Abridged?
Sorry, Hellsing Ultimate. I keep getting those two mixed up. I've only seen Hellsing Abridged. YouTube that.
Anyway.
So occasionally it happens that an ending for an anime is kind of changed from the manga when the anime catches up to the manga. And because the manga was monthly, of course, that's bound to happen. But no, Arakara actually allowed Bones, in fact, requested that Bones work completely independently of her initial plans for the end of the manga. She wanted them to write an ending that was different. She saw the idea of an anime going down the exact same path of the manga as an unnecessary repetition, which is kind of bizarre to think about.
Yeah.
People these days are obsessed with authenticity in a lot of their media. If it derives from a source, they want it to be the same, but she did not. And
So it's like prioritizing imagination.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what was different about the original versus Brotherhood?
Well, the original kind of covered some stuff which wasn't explored in Brotherhood.
Yeah, there were a lot of stories which were covered in more episodic detail. They were mentioned in passing, or like characters were introduced who would reference something that had happened in that original series. But, if you were watching, you're just like, okay, I guess that happened off screen.
Yeah.
And,
It's interesting because some of the stories that were introduced, such as the main first story in Fullmetal Alchemist, not Brotherhood, is where they go to the town of Leon and they're searching for the Philosopher's Stone.
Now, that does happen later in Brotherhood, but only for like an episode, and it leads into that a little, and it's shorter than it should be.
Much shorter.
In the original, it's 2 episodes long, and there are returns to it and callbacks to it, because it was kind of a pivotal moment.
It really was. And there's a lot of other bits and pieces which were left out, which were in the manga and didn't appear in either. Which is crazy.
The villain and the ending are, of course, entirely different.
Oh, yeah.
The story of the shadowy organization of creatures after the Philosopher's Stones called the Homunculi, they have an entirely different origin story and actually have a lot more characterization in Fullmetal Alchemist Original.
Yeah.
Not that what you get in Brotherhood is anything to like sniff at. It's how they're presented in that is, they are crazy things of
They
nightmare.
do a really good job of making them very, very clearly to be the villains of the story. Whereas,
not just villains, but like imposing and alien and scary.
Whereas in that, in the original one, they didn't so much seem as the villains, more like they were following someone's order, more henchman-y. Which was kind of a big difference.
Granted,
between the
they
two of
actually had their own sort of motives and stuff, but yeah, they were definitely puppets on someone else's strings.
You know what I really enjoyed about it as well? I liked how there was that end goal always in place. We have to find the Philosopher's Stone so that we can get Al his body back. That was the main thing, and that it wasn't ever really sort of left by the wayside, and they work their way there. They get there.
Yeah.
And we get to see everything. It's amazing.
But even then, it's like they start learning about the Philosopher's Stone, why it exists, how it is formed. It raises a whole lot of sort of philosophical...
Ethical questions.
About sort of like, should we do this?
Yeah. I think the way the series ends is so unexpected.
Oh, you mean Brotherhood, of course.
Brotherhood,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't know. I'd say the original is also unexpected.
Well, they're
but-
both unexpected, but with Brotherhood, that ending, like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore it. I think it was the perfect resolution to the situation and very smartly done. But you don't see it coming. You don't realize what they do is an option, and that is something of that's great storytelling when it actually they suddenly introduce something which you would never have considered before, but it makes sense.
And it still works within the bounds of what you sort of know about this world. It works within the rules. It's not sort of like a game changer.
Exactly. But I greatly enjoyed it, and I can highly recommend anyone who hasn't seen Fullmetal Alchemist, either of them, you should check them out. And I'm pretty sure both Brotherhood and the original were on Netflix. I think only the original's on Netflix
There's
at the
a
moment.
live action adaptation on
Yeah.
Netflix. We haven't watched that yet, but
I
we
watched a bit
started.
of it, and
You heard some bad things about it, didn't you?
yeah, they tried to pack the entire series of anime into 2.5 hours.
I liked
That's
the
a recipe
CG.
for disaster.
It was very pretty.
The CG was pretty
but I
fun.
mean,
saw
I
for the
haven't
preview.
finished it yet.
But
so-
I actually got to tell you, it is actually hotly debated online which is better out of the original and the
really?
reboot. Yeah, it is hotly contested. It's practically controversy. I'm probably inviting a hatred just by mentioning it. Because
I think it's just a matter of preference, isn't it?
I honestly have to say it's not even that. It's both. It has to be both because each one plays to different strengths. Each one has a kind of a different style of animation in and of
Yeah.
themselves. The original is like the proportions are slightly different. Hands and feet are kind of bigger, but there is also reasoning behind that. There's a whole hand motif that's always in the manga. But it's each one of them does something different. I have to say, see them both and you'll get sort of a complete story.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it. I mean, for me, from a storytelling perspective, I prefer Brotherhood over the original, but I love the original as well. They're both great animes, and together they can give you the whole story. But interestingly, something that the writer said was that she saw the manga as more adult and teen orientated, and both of the series, not just the original series, as aimed at children. And when you think about what happens in both of those series, they are not aimed at children.
Yeah, there's some
they're not.
well, maybe if it's a learning experience, but my god, there's some confronting stuff.
Define children.
Exactly.
And I mean, you've got to consider where the writer actually came from with some of the things she researched for this. She spoke to actual World War II veterans about PTSD and being in battle, losing everything, losing limbs.
So that's how she knew how to rip our hearts out when things
when
we're not going to
bad.
mention.
More than that,
happen.
there's a whole side story, well, actually part of the main plot, about a country that was involved in a massacre in the story called Ishvala.
It's kind of stylized to look Middle Eastern almost.
Kind of, yes. Very, very out of the way and more primitive in comparison to sort of like this regimented army. And the whole thing about it is that in the story there is a massacre there. And the way the different characters react to it, a lot of them regret their actions, regret that they followed orders, regret that they were ever there to begin with. It is actually based on some semi-historic events in Japan
Yeah.
involving
out.
the Aboriginal people of...
Oh, the
Hokkaido, isn't
Ainu?
it?
Yes, the Ainu of Hokkaido. They were displaced by Japanese mainlanders some centuries ago.
Yeah, which has been interesting as well. Like Golden Kamuy actually visited that story as well.
The thing about that is the writer Arakawa's parents, on one side, they were displacers. They were Japanese mainlanders who were actually involved in this, and her other ancestors were also the displaced.
So the
Wow.
Ainu.
She is basically stuck in the middle of that. She had a lot of stories to tell in just this one thing,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
it shows.
That's fascinating.
It's I can't watch this anime again in the same light, just knowing these details about it.
yeah.
There's so much going on.
Something interesting to end on as well. So Arakawa also won the 5th Manga Taisho Award. That was in 2012, but this wasn't for Fullmetal Alchemist. This was for a series she created after Fullmetal Alchemist called Silver Spoon, which is set a lot more grounded in the real world. And I think it's from memory, it's to do with a young girl.
She's got some other like really decent stories to her credit. Hero's Tale of 2007 and Arslan Senki of 2015.
Yeah, so she did the manga adaptation from the novels that it was based on, which
That's right.
Yeah.
What's Silver Spoon about?
I didn't have a chance to have a look at the full
Okay, we're going to come back
synopsis.
with
We'll
that
have to come
because
back
it
with
could
that.
be anything.
Mhm. But we need to get on to our next reboot, which we're talking about.
Which
and
is your favourite,
It's my
Kyle,
favourite
isn't
thing
it?
ever.
It's what started this off for you.
It really is. And it's actually got its 4th film coming out this year.
Woohoo!
Kawaii-Fi Radio. We'll be there on time. There's 20 minutes of ads.
Cinema Club.
And there has been regularly 20 minutes of ads as we gag every
It's
time.
always a thing. It's
Yeah.
constant.
Now, we're talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion, of
Because
course.
of course we bloody
Of
have
course
to.
we have to. And we're actually talking about its rebuild films, as they've been dubbed. Now, these are a reboot of the original series by director and creator Anno Hideaki. And so the original series, if you're not aware, was created in 1995, ran for 26 episodes, had 2 films to complement the ending due to budgetary restrictions. And the story is as such. In the year 2000, the world was shook by what was called the Second Impact.
Thought you were about to say Y2K.
Yes, it was the Y2K bug. It was definitely the Y2K bug. A global cataclysm which destroyed Antarctica and led to the death of half the human population on Earth. In the year 2015, the world stands again on the brink of destruction. Humanity's last hope lies in the hands of NERV, a special agency under the United Nations and their Evangelions, giant machines capable of defeating the monstrous angels who are trying to bring the Earth to ruin. After many years apart, 14-year-old Shinji Ikari is summoned by his father, the head of NERV, and thrust into a traumatic role. He must become the pilot of Evangelion Unit 1 and fight the angels, and the fate of mankind is on his shoulder.
This thing is a staple for the mecha genre.
Yeah, we've talked about Neon Genesis before on this podcast, back when it landed on Netflix, but we've not really talked about the series reboot and why it was rebooted. And there's, firstly, just a few little fun facts about Neon Genesis. The word Evangelion is in relation to the ancient Greek term for good messenger or good news, and the name was chosen in part for its religious symbolism and because Anno said he liked the word because it sounded complicated.
I like that.
Yeah.
I
I just
like
like-
him being honest about it.
It's like,
'Cause
I just thought it sounded cool. I just used
It does
it.
sound cool.
It does.
I think if my training is correct, it's a neutral term. So it's neither male nor female.
It isn't. Anno also became disillusioned with Japanese otaku culture during the series' production.
Wow.
And due to this is apparently why the plot of the series became increasingly dark and psychological. This all happened despite the fact that the show was being broadcast in a children's show time slot.
What time was it being shown?
About 9 a.m. What? Apparently, Anno felt people should be exposed to the realities of life at as young an age as possible.
Dude.
Yikes. Between the Pokemon epilepsy incident and this, I worry for
That's-
Japanese children.
The Pokemon epilepsy incident actually stopped Anno from wanting to make TV series
Wait.
because of
You know-
restrictions that it had made on TV production.
I just said that as a throwaway joke. My God, that really has just had the lasting consequences.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to him. He would have been in such a dark place to have been like, you know what? They need to know, man.
Well, Anno suffered from depression for his whole life. It's been a struggle for him. And this actually was further compounded. If for those who have watched the entire Neon Genesis series and got to the end and went, what on earth just happened? Budgeting issues at Gainax, and we have mentioned this before in relation to
Yes.
Gurren Lagann, forced Anno to replace the planned ending of the series with episodes set inside the main characters' minds and exploring their psyches and emotional challenges while the show ending played out.
Yeah, at that point, I got a little confused
Yeah.
the first time I saw it.
The ending, as you can imagine, didn't go well with fans. So in 97, they launched a project to readapt the ending into a feature-length film, but budgeting issues left the film half-finished.
God damn.
With only 27 minutes of animation done. This became the back end of Evangelion Death and Rebirth. Anno then received letters of encouragement and criticism from fans, including death threats. And eventually the project culminated in the end of Evangelion film. That was the full-blown 3-act film that served as a full ending to the series.
Can you imagine having depression and getting hate mail?
Yeah, that's...
He would have had to have had a good
Just
therapist.
guys,
Very good
don't do
therapist.
that. That's rude.
Guys,
not
if anyone wants to write anything hateful, just imagine if the person is right in front of you. Don't pretend the screen is hiding them, because it's not hiding either of you.
I don't think that'll stop some people.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but
Alas.
one day people will be accountable.
Yes.
I know it.
They will. Now, let's get on to the important part here, the rebuild of Evangelion. So the first series came out. It wasn't initially successful during that children's time slot for obvious reasons. It was then shifted to a later time slot for a rerun, and it became an instant classic. And it's well known in the anime
It's
community.
so well recognized as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was already a cult classic of anime, so the fact that a rebuild was coming out, everyone would just be like, get on that now!
Now, the rebuild of Evangelion, known in Japan as Evangelion New Theatrical Edition, is a retelling of the original Neon Genesis story over 4 films. It started in 2007, and the 4th and final film is due for release this July. Anno Hideaki began working on the films in 2002. He rewatched, apparently, the entire original series repeatedly while working on pre-production, but he was delayed by several other projects he agreed to work on until 2006.
Including Shin Godzilla?
No, that's a later delay. Cutie Honey OVAs. Yep,
Oh.
Magical Girls. I don't know why.
I just, so the 4th film is coming out this year, and it's going to be the last one,
Yes.
right? I can't begin to imagine what the ending is going to look like.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Let me guess, he has just saved 50% of the entire budget of it just for the ending.
Well, here's the thing. Anno left Gainax.
Oh.
He left Gainax on pretty bad terms, and they still owe him a bucket load of money. He founded Studio Kara, which is his own studio, in 2006 for the express purpose of creating the rebuild Neon Genesis films.
I'm glad he took all the rights with him.
Yeah, well, he negotiated to get them back. There's a very interesting article that came out a few weeks ago that I can't remember if it was on Variety or Vox, and it was looking at why he left them and the struggles he's had since, and they're still in legal disputes over this. It's a mess because Gainax has stopped being... Gainax originally was founded as, a lot of people who are passionate about anime making original animes.
Did
And
it get too corporate?
It got way too corporate and way too greedy by the sounds of it. It sounds like essentially the company's done everything to get as much money as possible and then divest all that into a secondary company called Gainax North, which is separate from Gainax, so that money can't... Yeah, it is shady and a disaster. And it's why we haven't seen anything for Gainax in years, and why so many studios came out of Gainax, because so many people had enough of the corporate policy and left.
Such a shame.
So the films have seen many delays. 2006, we got confirmation that the first Neon Genesis film, Evangelion 1.0, You Are Not Alone, not in brackets in every time the word not is said for these films, that came out in 2007, and the plan was for them to come out every 18 months. So 2007, 2009, and then have part 3 and 4 come out as a double feature in 2010 or 2012, I believe.
I still remember when there was a real short teaser shown for the first film, and there were crowds.
Yeah.
And they saw it, and it was only like 6 seconds or something. I don't know. It was so short, but the cheer that went up was so
insane.
loved.
It was
by
a good
everyone.
6 seconds.
Yeah. What ended up happening was in 2009, Evangelion 2.0 came out, which was You Cannot Advance, and once again, not in brackets. And then it was 2012, 3 years later, before 3.0 came out. And the preview from at the end of Evangelion 2.0 did not match what was done for 3.0 at all. And the Evangelion 3.0 preview does not match what looks like is coming for Evangelion 3.0 plus 1 this year. And that's an 8-year gap.
Yeah, we are going to get surprises.
You
I
might
think,
be
aren't we?
wondering why the big gap. Originally, it was planned to release in 2015, and the film was indefinitely delayed due to Anno's involvement in the 2016 film Shin Godzilla for Toei Animation. He also spoke about how Evangelion had burned him out by 2015, and with the troubled production of the third film, because there were issues at the same time with Gainax around then, it sent him into a deep depression, and this appeared to be remedied by Toho offering him to reboot the Godzilla franchise with that film. He later then blamed the production of Shin Godzilla for delaying the fourth film.
Well, I mean, it was. That's what it was. But I mean, like, that film was amazing.
It was.
He did such a good job with it.
He did.
I mean,
Shin Godzilla's amazing.
Of course he's going to feel burned out, though. This thing started in 1995, and it's 2020 now. It's
yeah.
That's a heck of a project.
Yeah, so let's talk about the films, because there are some differences. This isn't the same Neon Genesis that you would have seen.
Still unfamiliar ceilings?
Many unfamiliar ceilings. So Evangelion 1.0 covers the series' first 6 episodes, and it climaxes in the fight with Ramiel, the floating fortress Diamond City. It's very similar to the original series, but you start noticing improved graphics and animation, a lot less wasted time is cut out, and there's along with slight design tweaks as well towards the aliens, so the angels, sorry. So the story is a lot more streamlined, and it's very good. And you're getting 6 episodes in the same amount of time, but with a lot of the fat cut and more info given.
And I would definitely back you up on the updated animation. There is this clip of Shinji running EVA Unit 1 across a city, and it's just how it's cracking the sound barrier, blowing cars to the side. And in fights, it's like the punches and the hits and the blasts, they feel more impactful. They feel more tangible.
They feel like they hit.
They feel like they hit you.
Yeah. So Evangelion 2.0 is where things really start to change. We're introduced to a new pilot, which is Mari Illustrious Makanami, and she pilots the Provisional Unit 5, which was never seen in the series. In the original series, Unit 5 exploded during a test in North America.
Along with the pilot, this additional
the American
character?
Nerth branch, obliterating the base, killing all people in North America who evolved with Nerth.
Whoa.
Taking out some supercomputers, a lot of stuff. It just wiped them out. Instead, the film opens showing the fight between Unit 5 and the resuscitated skeleton of the Third Angel. The Third Angel was never shown in the anime's proper series, if that makes sense. Mari kills the angel and escapes, but it does still result in the destruction of Nerth's Arctic Bethany base. Now, fun little fact there, we know that Neon Genesis loves to play with Christian mythology and storytelling through its themes.
It's in the name.
Yeah. Many of the bases are named after locations in the Holy Land. Bethany is in the West Bank and was the site where Jesus is said to have brought Lazarus back from the dead. It makes sense for an angel to reincarnate inside a place called Bethany. Pretty cool. The rest of the film follows much of the series' original plot with the addition of the new characters, but it also removes some of what can be considered filler. So, like the Jet Alone competitor, which is a robot they made, which was nuclear, made by the Japanese government to be a competitor to the Evangelions. When they go magma diving to get a unusual angel, which is in its childish form inside a volcano, or the virus angel, they are taken out of the story altogether to kind of slim it down. Instead, this covers episodes 7 to 19. It's a lot of stuff to be covered. And the series ends with the fight against Zuriel, the unit, with Unit 1 once again eating this angel. This is the one which had the strange sort of toilet rolly arms, which it fired out and sliced things and brought back. And they fight it in the Geo front, and it was very, big climax. This is where everything changes, because this instead, in the original series, the Evangelion becomes almost godlike creature, because it's ingested an angel, if you will.
And kind of assimilated its biology into its weird form.
This time, the worst possible outcome happens, the third impact.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I don't think you've seen the third film. I know Coco has seen it, and it's absolutely out of this world. I won't ruin any surprises to you, but a lot has changed.
Yes.
Because the third impact was kind of averted in the original one, right?
Exactly.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. The world has been reshaped. allegiances have changed, and the only thing that remains from the original story is the introduction of Kaworu and his romantic interest for Shinji. That's the only thing that's the same.
Whoa.
That's it. Some people really didn't like it. It's a pretty drastic change from the original story. And you can imagine people going, what on earth is going on? Because it feels very raw. It's very apocalyptic. And I loved it. This is what I wanted to see. We saw little hints of change in the second film. I wanted the third film to be something completely new, something I'd never seen before.
It was,
and I wasn't expecting what I got, and I loved it.
That kind of mirrors what happened with Fullmetal Alchemist. It's the manga went in one direction, but then the animation went, woo, something completely different. So...
And we're so used to getting things that we are expecting. It's like we expect those expectations to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And that's not for us to decide.
It isn't.
And it seems like the animators and a lot of creators in Japan just we've seen that. We want to do something else with it now.
Yeah, and I mean, with Anno, this was his story to begin with. I mean, others did contribute to it, but it's his core idea.
Yeah, it is.
And
he's all through it.
He's all through it. Let him have his run with it.
Yeah.
But the fourth film, which is Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, and then it's got the musical notation for end repeat after it, which is the twin dots and two lines.
Oh yes.
That's due out in July in Japan this year. So hopefully this year we'll get to see it in our cinemas because
they have to.
The last three did
can't
not
not.
make it to the cinemas here for us. I want to see this. This needs...
We need to petition. Get a petition running.
A film festival of
Let's
just Evangelion
start.
films.
I should get in touch with Anime
Honestly,
Lab and be like, hey guys.
You know what? People would flock if there were if there was a double bill of film 1 and 2, break, film 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? You just get enough of a time for a lunch break and then you go back in and watch
an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So you could go and relax and breathe a bit. And
Yes.
People would pay a hefty amount for a big double feature like that.
Or just do it over 2 nights.
Yeah.
Do a
Yes.
a Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Because midweek wonders.
Yeah.
Actually, no. If you've got 4 hours of film, you might be a bit exhausted by the end of that.
We
for
need
work.
to get this happening.
Anyway, we will come back to this another episode when we have sent an email off to Anime Lab and said,
Many
do
emails.
the things. But for that's where we've got to end it for today.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
And that's where we need to leave things to this episode. Thanks so much for joining us. Next episode, we're talking about anime that makes you want to cry.
Oh, the ones that make you want to ugly cry.
The ones that leave you in a pile on the floor.
Ones that make you never want to leave your house for a year, keeping all the blinds permanently closed as you order takeout from the takeout, asking your friends to go shopping for you as you hide in your dark den, surrounded by trash like a Snooki Badger and takeaway bags.
Kyle, do you want to talk about this?
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
But we will find out which anime did this to him next episode.
Now,
won't we?
before we do get on to the next episode information, we need to talk about what anime you would reboot.
Ooh,
It's
I
a
wanna
hard
say-
question, isn't it?
I want to say Outlaw Star.
Oh yeah, Outlaw Store was pretty good.
Because that
yeah.
was a great sci-fi. I would love to see that with updated graphics.
That actually makes me feel... Actually, I mean, I love Trigun as it is, but I would love to see an updated Trigun with the modern graphics and engines that they could use, because they could really do something special with it.
I could see that.
I want to see Dragon Ball Z. I want to see it rebooted and
In the current style.
I don't know, whatever style an artist decides to do it in, I want to see it reimagined and put back out there, and I just want to see it. That just sounds great.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what would you do, Kyle?
I think it has to be Trigun. It's
Yeah.
as I said,
Yeah.
I'm now doubling down.
So
I want to see
you've decided.
Trigun redone.
All right.
I want
Good.
to see Trigun redone.
Wonderful. So, if you've enjoyed listening, make sure you like and subscribe to get our latest episodes straight to your device.
And don't forget, check out our Instagram and Facebook for breaking anime news and some videos.
Always some videos, yes. You've been
Always.
listening to Kawaii-Fi Radio. Thank you for joining us. And until next time,
Watch some anime.